Hey everyone, Dr. L here with your week time video. So without further ado, let's dig into stratification focusing on race. So I'm going to do housekeeping, review, lecture, exit, pass, and reminders. Make sure you're emailing me ahead of time if you miss class for any reason. And if you're missing multiple classes for the same reason, make sure you email me before each of those class sessions. It's a final call for midterm exam 2 test corrections. So if you need to do test corrections, make sure you email me, letting me know you plan on doing them, and I'll give you more detailed instructions on that. I'm caught up with grading, so make sure you're paying attention to the feedback I'm providing on discussion posts in eLearn on the gradebook. And of course, if you have any questions about the feedback or about your score, you can always email me, come to my office hours, or schedule another time to meet. And if you notice any discrepancies in the grade book, you think you submitted something and should have had a score and you don't, feel free to contact me. Um, in terms of calculating your grade and knowing where you stand in the class at any given moment, you can always add up how many points we've earned as a class up until that point, and then you can add up how many points you've earned on eLearn, and you can do that math. And again, if you have any questions about calculating your grade, feel free to contact me. Uh, I've said this and belabored this point quite a bit, but don't forget to follow the prompt and rubrics when you're doing the discussion posts. So I will be using them more thoroughly from discussion post 6 onward for grading purposes. So if you're missing parts of the prompt or you're missing parts of the rubric, I will be taking off points. And I've gone over that enough in class and in these videos that you should know what to do. I've also sent out class-wide emails that include examples of what in-text citations and references should look like. So keep that in mind. And again, if you have any questions, email me. This past week, we also talked about AI policies. So just as a refresher, and this is in the syllabus, so you should have known this from the beginning of the semester, but I don't want students using AI to think critically or creatively for them, especially in writing assignments like discussion posts. You can, however, use AI platforms such as Grammarly for more mechanical things like grammar, spelling, and formatting, stuff like that. The way I view AI is if you went to a high school where you didn't learn grammar, spelling, or how to write a paper, maybe you never wrote a paper in high school and now you're in college and it's your first time writing a paper. Using AI for some of those mechanical things like spelling and grammar can be a way to level the playing field so that your writing is a little bit more equitable compared to someone who did learn all of those mechanics of writing when they were in high school. However, you shouldn't be using AI to think creatively for you. And if you do, you're, going to lose points for that. So just keep that in mind. If you can think of any events or anything like that you want to share with your classmates, you can always do that at the beginning of our in-person class, or you can also email me things and I'll send out a class-wide email. So one thing that I know about that's coming up, there is an event that's a collaboration between the languages program and sociology, where students can meet up. It's on a Wednesday evening, but it's before my Wednesday evening blended class. So students from both sections should be able to attend if you want to. So if you're interested in attending that event, where there'll be games and learning about languages and culture and things like that, feel free to email me and I will send you that flyer. All right, so just as a review, social stratification is the systems of inequity that organize categories of people into hierarchies, which reflects intersecting lines of values and power based on race, class, gender, and other identity categories. We've talked throughout the semester about how these power dynamics can persist across generations, and specifically with social stratification, there are different types of systems. So there are closed and open systems, ascribed and achieved systems, and things like that. Now, in more fluid open systems or achieved systems, we can have social mobility when it comes to social class, which is a change in class position from one's family of origin. Now, thinking more about social stratification in terms of race, we got to talk about all this stuff here. So, racism is a set of attitudes, beliefs, and practices that are used to justify the belief that one racial category is somehow superior or inferior to others. This can lead to discrimination, which is prejudiced action against a group of people. And of course, a prejudice is a biased thought or thoughts based on flawed assumptions about a group of people. Often this is rooted in harmful stereotypes. Now, racism can play out in a bunch of different ways in our society, and often we tend to think about what racism means on a micro scale in our everyday social interactions, perhaps even based off of personal experiences or things we've observed in our own social life. But it can also occur or persist in sort of a more macro, large scale within social institutions. And that's what we call systemic racism. I would say this is a term we often or more increasingly hear in social media spaces and things like that, but folks don't always define it. So it's important to do that. And here is sort of the textbook definition of systemic racism. It's racism embedded in social institutions, also referred to as institutional racism and structural racism. Now, of course, we have theories related to prejudice and racism. So, culture of prejudice is the theory that prejudice is embedded in our culture. Now, all of these forms of racism and prejudice and things like that, especially if we're thinking about how they impact social institutions, it can lead to really violent, problematic things. And so, one of those is genocide, which is the deliberate annihilation of a targeted, usually subordinate group. Probably the most common example given of genocide in modern history would be during World War II and what happened in Nazi Germany to mostly the Jewish community, but also other historically marginalized groups of people. But we continue to see genocide occur in countries across the world in the 21st century. And so it's important to understand these things and how they impact social institutions so that we can hopefully work to eradicate all of this, but especially genocide moving forward and thinking about alternative futures and what social institutions can look like. Now, of course, when we think about all this stuff, we also have to think about privilege and oppression, specifically the privileged group. And so we have talked more broadly throughout the semester about privilege and oppression, but when we're honing in and focusing on race, we have to think specifically about white privilege, which is a societal privilege that benefits white people or those perceived to be white over non white people in some societies, including the United States. Now, having privilege or oppression most often these are identity categories that we're born into, and we really don't have any control over them, right? So it's not necessarily saying that, okay, because you're a part of the privileged group, that's inherently a bad thing. It just means that that is an identity category that exists, and we have to acknowledge it and what it means as far as how power dynamics play out in our everyday lived experiences as people in a society, and also what these things mean at a more macro scale for social institutions. Now, folks who carry privilege can engage in anti racist ideology. Anti racist is just a person who opposes racism and acts for racial justice. Now, to me, the important thing here is acting. So it's not just about claiming you're not racist or saying you're not racist. It's about doing things that demonstrate on a regular basis without feeling the need to, sort of tell people that you're doing these things, that you're doing things and acts that show that you're an ally to folks from historically marginalized communities. So that can look like attending protests. It can look like standing up for someone if they're experiencing racism in a work setting or in schools, things like that. And then finally, last term here is intersectionality. Now, we've been talking about intersectionality since the beginning of the semester, and I introduced this definition here, which is my own definition. Your textbook authors choose this chapter on race and social stratification to provide you with their textbook definition of intersectionality or their own version of it. But for our purposes, we're going to review this term that we first got introduced to at the beginning of the semester. And so intersectionality is the interconnectedness of systems of oppression, looking at race, class, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, ableism, sizeism, and other aspects of identities to answer questions about how these forms of privilege and oppression overlap and intersect. And of course, this is review and something we've been talking about throughout the semester. Don't forget to do your exit paths. They are linked here on this slide. These are the same links that are on the in-person PowerPoint slide. And when we have our in-person session for week 9, of course, I will send out these links to you via email. Just make sure if you're clicking on the link here for yourself, you do the right section. So if you're in my Tuesday morning class, you click on the top link. And if you're my Wednesday evening class, you click on the bottom link. Other than that, keep reading. Do discussion post 7, which is due Sunday, week 9 at 11:59 p.m. reviewing the rubrics and the prompt carefully for that assignment. Other than that, have a great week and I will see you in person soon.